The goal of this screencast is to learn how to use while loops in MATLAB. When considering while loops, there are two types that we need to consider. The first one being conventional while loops, then the second type being forever while loops. In this video, we will cover conventional while loops. So the question is, when do we use while loops? You want to use while loops when you don't know the number of times you need to carry out a process. On the other hand, if you do know the number of times you need to carry out a process, you would use a for loop. So let's look at the general format for using conventional while loops in MATLAB. Here you first write the word while, and then you have your criteria. A criteria is typically an inequality or equality such as I is equal to 101 or I is equal to or I is less than 101, I is greater than 101, or any other number for that matter. Then in the body of your while loop, you have statements that need to be executed. So these are essentially your calculations. Once you have done that, you have one line that increments the index value. So essentially you need to change your criteria. So if you set criteria is less than 101, your change of index value could be I is equal to I plus 1 or I is equal to I minus 1. Once you're done with all of that, you simply write the word end to end your while loop. Okay, so now let's look at a couple of examples to get a better understanding of how while loops work in MATLAB. Here we're asked to find sum of all numbers from 1 to 100 using while loops. So the first thing we need to do is we need to initialize the variables that will be manipulated inside the while loop. Here we are going to manipulate sum and I inside the while loop. So we'll have to initialize them outside of the while loop first. So we say sum as of right now is equal to 0 and the index value as of right now, I, is equal to 1. Then we write our while loop using the general format for writing while loops in MATLAB. So first we write the word while, then we have our criteria. In this case we'll say, since we want to add all the numbers from 1 to 100, we'll say I is less than 101. So the highest value I can take is 100 before it has to kick out of this loop. Then we write statements that needs to be executed. So the statement that needs to be executed in our case is sum is equal to sum plus I. And then finally we change our index value. So we change the value of I every time we go through this loop. We'll say I is equal to I plus 1, so it starts at 1 and then it makes its way up to 100 as it goes through this loop every time. So how does this loop work? Let's look at it from the beginning. When you enter the loop, the value of I initially is 1. So you ask yourself, is 1 less than 101? And the answer is true. So you go into the body of the loop and you say, okay, sum is equal to sum plus I. The initial value of sum as of right now is 0, plus I, the value of I as of right now is 1. So you say sum is equal to 1. Then you go down here to this line and you say I is equal to I plus 1. The current value of I is equal to 1, and 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. So the new value of I is 2. You go back up here and you say, okay, is 2 less than 101? And that is true. So you go back into the body of the loop and you say sum is equal to sum plus I. The current value of sum was 1, and you add I to it, which means 2 to it. So 1 plus 2 is 3. When having done that, you go to the next line and you say, okay, I is equal to I plus 1. The current value of I is 2. Adding 1 to it gives you 3. So new value of I is 3. You go back up here again, you say, okay, is 3 less than 101? And that's true. So you go back into the body and you say sum is equal to sum plus I. The value of I as of right now is 3, and the value of sum is 3. So 3 plus 3 is 6. You go back down here and you say, okay, I is equal to I plus 1. The value of I was 3, plus 1 is 4. You keep doing that until you get to I is equal to 100. So sum is equal to sum plus I. So the sum should be 50-50 when I is equal to 100. You go back down to this line, you say, okay, I is equal to I plus 1. Now the new value of I becomes 101 because we said the value of I as of right now was 100, and adding 1 to it becomes 101. You go back up here, you see it, you check this inequality. Is 101 less than 101? And that's not true. So you kick out of this loop and go to this next line and move on with your program. That is one way of doing it. Now there are other ways of doing it as well. Here, this is a different way of doing essentially the same thing. You initialize your variables at the beginning, and then you write your while loop. Instead of starting at 1 here and adding up to 100, we start at 100 and we go up to 1 by subtracting. So there are no right ways of using a while loop or a wrong way, as long as you know what you're doing. So we'll run our code quickly to see if we get 50-50. So indeed we see that both sum and sum1 equal 50-50. So we know that our code is correct. So now let's look at a general algorithm for using while loops in MATLAB. When you start your while loop, the first thing you do is you check to see if your criteria is true. If it's true, then you do your calculations and make your way back to see if the criteria is still true. Now, if it's no longer true, you kick out of the loop and you're done.